What's up, YouTube? Welcome. It is another episode of Thirsty Smurfin' Thursday. My name is Matt. Sometimes I go by the Grass Factor. And alongside me, we have Ray. We have J Pink behind the keys. Throw us a sound effect, J Pink. We got
You
the
are
good.
a fucking pussy.
There it is. And Demay's coming shortly. He's hanging out with his rentals. Real quick, getting some time in there, and so you gotta do what you gotta do. Um, Heads up here, we have no plan for the show tonight. So if there's anything you would like us to cover, by all means, please send it in. I did ask a couple of questions on Facebook. We'll get to that here in a minute. The old Facebook face crack. I forget it exists from time to time, right? And then when I remember, I'm like, oh yeah, there is such a thing as Facebook. So actually, look, I got in there pretty quickly, right? Um, a couple. One of the things that I thought was interesting was what people are working on this year, right? So, Lawn Care Monster says he is switching to a new CRM to better automate his business. For those of you that don't know what a CRM is, a customer relationship management software, manager software. And in the green industry, there are several different options, um, and there's varying degrees of efficacy and power that you can get out of them. And we could talk a little bit about that later on. And you can make the determination whether or not it is right for you. Scott Brenninger says he is working on improving his lawn care program, and I feel like it is definitely worth revisiting from time to time, whether you end up making any changes or not. And I'll say this too: is that the smaller I was, the more invested I was in constantly tweaking things, and then as I got busier, it was more like how can I just keep this machine moving at as fast of a pace as possible? And then the one that I thought was actually really interesting was Matt Montgomery said he is trying to reduce bad debt. And why I think that's interesting is that it actually kind of plays into the first question with the CRM, right? I'll say this is that and by the way, if you have any questions, throw them into the chat. Jim Pink will log them to us. We will get to them on a first come, first serve basis. Do understand that it takes me time to answer questions. I talk entirely too much. And the other thing too is that we are human, we are fallible, we do make mistakes. Fact check everything we say. For Christ's sake, we're doing this live. It is stream of consciousness. We do not get these questions in advance and prepare uh, 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 theses or whatever they're called. We don't take these in advance, so we do answer them live. So by all means, just double check that what we're saying is actually factual, because sometimes I may be answering a question about an assumption I made, and I made the wrong assumption because you put it into two. I said theses, Nick, theses, like a master thesis, the plural of theses. I don't even know if that's correct. It just sounded funny, so I used it. Um, and so, by all means, it is moving forward. Real quick, Jago, am I making any changes, improvements to Green or SP? Changes, yes. It is only going to exist as a liquid moving forward. The handling aspect of it is very difficult. The struggle that we were trying to figure out was shelf life stability, and playing around with nailing a certain pH. Actually, we were able to do that, right? So some DI water, some preservatives of sorts to prevent both acid and alkaline hydrolysis. But luckily, peptides are pretty stable, especially in acid conditions. So we had to dick around there a little bit, but we feel pretty good. It's been good for right about a year now, and so that looks like it is passing the smell test with flying colors. And so that will be the change, but that's probably not gonna be a thing until February, maybe March. Um,
Oh,
and yeah.
Nick is
Uh,
asking.
yeah, what is the cheapest way to produce DI water at home? With an RO system?
Yep, that's what I do.
That's what I do, Matt. I mean, I do RO for drinking and cooking water, and
Mhm.
I got to tell you guys about this little FAFO I did with the RO water making up some glyphosate. It worked differently from pulling water out of the regular untreated city water supply.
I would say you
Took hold.
saw an increase in effectiveness.
Mhm. Very much so, because usually when I do glyphosate, I'm working around the 1% solution space.
Mhm, mhm.
I don't go particularly high, because for me, I believe that if 1% glyphosate doesn't take it out, I think I should be using something else.
Jago just had an ad play during this live stream that is hilarious. I don't know if you're joking with me or not. If not, um, that is really new. I've never seen that before. So I'll take a look at it at some point offline. Unfortunately, I'll tell you this: of the list of things that he said, seriously, okay.
Matt,
I've got
Matt,
a huh?
Matt.
Yes,
That's what
yes.
we talked about
Oh,
when
that
we
was
were on the
while
pre-show.
it was live. Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yes, that's
I
it.
didn't.
It
I
Mhm.
changed.
missed that part. Okay,
You
okay,
Mhm.
YouTube changed all that monetization stuff.
okay. We
Mhm.
See,
can. We
Jesse's complaining about it too. It's
yeah.
Mhm.
one every 30 minutes that we're live at most.
Mhm.
That's what it's supposed
Uh,
to be.
Yeah, I have a list of things that I have to do, related to YouTube, so I will get to it. It is on my list, but it is not priority number 1. Anyway, just word of warning there. It will happen. It's not gonna happen right now.
We we could make it be every 6 minutes
Yeah.
instead of every 30.
Yeah, it could be every 6 minutes. Jesse's getting them every 10 minutes or so. Um anyway, those are settings that I have to Jesse's gonna sue it. Those are settings I have to dig around with. That's new. That is all new. J Pink just told me about it about like 15 minutes ago, and he actually scaled it down before the stream. So bear with us on that. I apologize. I don't apologize, but like I said, it is something I will address at some point when I when I find the motivation to do it. Um, me, hashtag me too. Anyway, related to bad debt and uh, what you call it, bad debt and CRM software. Okay, so I know that there's one particular piece of software. One is called Service Autopilot, right? I have when I came up in corporate lawn care, I worked with Real Green. I worked with Real Green with two different companies, and then on my own, I played with a couple different companies and ended up settling a Service Autopilot. One of the big selling points for the early days of Service Autopilot was moving all your customers to auto bill, right? Where it's a card on file when you post your applications. And what I mean by post is like, okay, you go in, you look at a map, and you have all your properties sorted on a map by like days since last treatment, right? You can set a filter and say you set it for like 35 days, right? So you're looking at a map of whose properties haven't been sorted, who have not been treated in 35 days based on what's left of that round, right? So say you're on round three, you've treated 100 of your 400 customers, 75 of them are available in that 35 days. So you draw your route out, you click and drag and put a box over the route you want to run. It pulls them all into a queue, and you can either print a stack of invoices that you can take and leave a copy of it there, or you could dispatch it over to your cell phone and then run it off of there. And then when you finish your property, you can either do it at the end of the property and go ahead and push an invoice to the customer, and it will trigger and well, no, you just push an invoice to the customer. You get back at the end of the day, and then you post all of those invoices that you issued, and it goes ahead and runs their credit card that's on file, right? It simplifies the amount of time you have to spend chasing money because when you run a business, cash flow is king. Unless you have the size business where you run entirely on like a daily settled line of credit. Um, and there are some businesses that do that, right? If you have a very cash demanding business and you offer terms and all that other fun stuff, and say, in an effort to keep you running, and you've got like 6 month lead times on equipment that you purchase and stuff, you may entirely operate on a line of credit. The bank is your friend in that regard, and they are looking under every rock and nook and cranny for any dollar that they can possibly find. um, I will say that, a lot of lawn care businesses up to a certain size are not going to fit that real well just because banks aren't going to get excited about it. However, as you get larger and larger, eventually you can become operable on a line of credit, and effectively, right? It's like your bank account starts at zero, but it's actually, we'll say your line of credit's like $500,000. Your bank account is at zero, but you have $500,000. So as you spend, it draws into the negative, right? And so your balance will be, minus whatever, minus whatever, minus whatever, minus whatever. And then as you post all your invoices for the end of the day, all those get debited back into your account, right? And so as that gets reconciled at the end of the night, the next morning you wake up and where you finish the day at minus $14,237, now you're back at plus 52,000 or whatever, but actually it's 552,000. Okay. So we're just talking about operating your business on a line of credit. Like, you completely function everything on a line of credit, and especially if it's reconciled every day through the bank, you know what that looks like. And what we're talking about is a card on file business model for
Mm.
lawn care to cut down on the amount of bad debt that you have to settle every year, right? Um, here's and why that becomes so advantageous is exactly that. Cash is king, especially if you do not operate on a line of credit. You have to have free cash available. You got to go buy your next round of material. You want as much purchase power as possible. Maybe they say, hey, look, we'll give you this much of a break if you buy on 30 days, or you get this much of a break if you pay cash up front. Or you get this much of a break if you pay with a check versus a credit card, or whatever the case may be. And you have to do the calculus to figure out what makes sense, right? But if you don't have the cash to do that up front, you can't take advantage of those options to save 5%, 10%. And shit, I've seen them as high as 12% before if you pay cash up front. And that, when you're talking about 12%, say you're making $100,000 purchase for your round, that's 12 grand that does you basically get as cash back, right? That's one way to look at it. That's a little bit of woman math there, but legitimately that is 12 grand in your pocket that you did not anticipate being in your pocket, which is a net good. Okay. Now, when it comes to you have acquired bad debt, you have bad debt, and now you've got to figure out what to do with it. Good luck. It is, I don't know what to tell you about getting out of it. Now, there's a few things. I'll say this, that in corporate lawn care, when you do run on a line of credit, the bank will typically tell you to sell it to a debt collector. Okay. And they'll go after it that way. You just pool up what you have at the end of the year. Say you've got $20,000 in bad debt. You sell it for 5 grand, 4 grand to a debt collector, and then they go ham on it. But you at least recoup something, right? Yeah, it's still a loss, but you still recoup something when you had nothing before. And the problem where it in small businesses, right, is that okay, you've got 4 grand of bad debt, and that 4 grand is the difference between you getting through winter and not getting through winter. And then you try to sell that, and they're like, yeah, we'll give you $400. You're like, fuck, man, fuck. I need 4 grand, but you can only give me $400. Okay. That that
Eh,
can be an issue when it comes to settling your debt, man. I to settling that debt, I don't know what else you can do aside from show up, leave notes on the door. I tell them the seriousness of the situation and the harm that they cause. You try and just be transparent and honest that like you're legitimately causing harm. to me,
Mhm,
to my wife, to my
mhm.
family, because of your decision to fuck me on this. And I get it. Times are tough. But in this instance, especially if it's a lawn app, it'd be like, look, you owe me $120. But the reality is that you're one of 400. And between that 400, that's $44,000. And I need that now.
Yep. You know, here's,
That's
my
$40,000.
thoughts on the
That's a lot
here's
of
my
money.
thoughts on this, Matt. I don't let people go more than 30 days before they're informed that they are past due, and as a past due person, several things happen to them. Firstly, you know, a service charge to service that debt starts accruing. Secondly, I terminate service. Thirdly, liens are put in place. And that is all before I've even talked about sending their debt off to a third party. All right. And that's, and the reason why it has to be that way is because the longer you let it go, usually the more in debt that person becomes and the less they're able to pay it off. So my policy is after 30 days, I ask very nicely. I tell them, where's the last month's, you know, payment due? And ask them, hey, what's going on? Because the reality is that in my case, that kind of debt will literally make it so that I tell them if I have too many people not paying when they agree to pay, I'm not going to be in business. I'm going to be gone.
It's a very real situation. Garner Earth guy he said his 20s were lit. I'll say he is not in his 20s anymore. And you probably can't get away with this like you used to. And the reason why is I remember back in like 2015, maybe, there was an outfit in Memphis. And I think this guy was owed for like two cuts, $80, right? But small
Mhm,
business, Memphis, he needs the $80. He's a mowing guy, right? So I mean, he's not
mhm.
making a ton of money as it is. And the lady would not pay him, and so what did he do is he went and he mowed the grass down to about a fraction of an inch, and,
Jesus.
I they ended up calling the news on him for that, and he was like, "I'm just trying to get paid," and I mean, they firebombed his Google listing with one-star reviews, and sure enough, he did. He ended up having to shut down because it was so extreme. What sucked too is that the guy was like, if I recall correct, I may be confusing like two or three different stories of one. It was a long time ago. My brain has continued to rot since then. But I think it was like he had been out of prison for like 4 years and was doing pretty good at his business. And but he's just flat out not going to take not being paid for the work he did that was agreed to. And and anyway, went and boy, he cut it to the dirt. It was a true dirt scalp, and looked amazing. I'm not gonna lie, he did a fantastic, cleaned it up too.
Mm,
But it was gone, and yeah, they had a hissy fit, and that's what he was saying. But when he was interviewing in the news, he's like, "It's gonna grow back. It's gonna grow back," and no one wanted to hear it.
Okay,
It's
nobody
probably
do
can't get away with
what
that anymore. Don't do that.
yeah, nobody do what Mike Shelley is saying to do. He said they don't pay Chernobyl their debt amount in the lawn. No, God no, fudge no.
Yeah, I know, again, when I worked in Memphis, there was this customer way outside of Memphis proper, like way out in the county, country bumpkin as hell area, and the old man lived there, would not let black people treat his yard. And one of and look, Memphis is like 70% black. Of course, there's going to be black technicians at triggering that are going to treat your yard. It is what it is,
Mhm.
and they trained me, for Christ's sake. And what did one of the guys do is he took a backpack of MSMA concentrate, and the guy had a yard that was visible from one of the main roads in Bartlett, and he wrote "fuck you" across his giant front yard in giant letters with MSMA concentrate, and it was one of the most beautiful things that we had ever seen. And we everyone had a picture on their phone where they drove by and took a picture of it, and kept it as a keepsake, as a reminder for that piece of shit that lived there. And you don't fuck with the lawn boy, you know. Don't forget. Don't fuck with
No.
the lawn.
No, don't mess with the lawn guy because, my joke when I worked for a company is I occasionally told the boss, "Hey, does this clown need the DuPont disease?" Okay, this was in the 1990s, and my boss,
I can
he
I
w
can
no,
I
my
can
my boss
go
whipped his
ahead.
head around because he was, he knows the invoices. He's looking at the invoices and said, "Oh, fuck, Ray, that's DuPont Hyvar, DuPont House, DuPont Carmex." He's like,
Boss,
"Oh, man.
boss, I
Oh,
can quickly
man."
move this lawn right from Honolulu right over to Bhopal. No problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, this can also be Bhopal. I mean, that's not wrong because,
You ever heard of
can
Union
do Bhop
Carbide before? Hmm.
Mhm.
They didn't pay
Hey,
their
I
bills either,
mean,
and they don't have to
that's right.
forever.
Yeah, that happens.
Oh, in probate
Exactly
right now.
right. Mhm. Yep. Sure is. So, yeah, that was my little joke. I said, "Hey, does this guy need the DuPont disease because he's whining or he's holding out on his bill?" And my boss just said, "What?" He said, and then he realized, "Oh hell, Ray, you've been ordering, Hyvar and Oust."
For a cold day. Um, the other thing too is in lawn care, it can be extremely difficult to do this, right? If you're dealing with 30 customers, it's a lot easier to have the kind of relationship where you understand their financial situation. When you
Mhm.
have 300 customers, it's difficult to keep a rolling pulse on everything. If you have 3,000 customers, you have no idea. If you have
However,
10,000 customers, you definitely have no idea.
when you scale up, hey, does the bank or the car dealership just let everybody slide without thoroughly vetting them when they sell cars, even though they're selling hundreds of cars per year? No,
No,
absolutely
no.
not. And that's why the same is true, Matt Montgomery. My God, if somebody asks me for lawn and landscape care, I can be almost as bad as them trying to buy a car or a house.
Well, I really, in this day and age, and it really depends and tracks on where you're at with your receivables and things like that. But I don't think in this day and age, the credit card and file thing or whatever, you can do that. But asking for payment before service, okay, think of this, and Matt should be old enough to remember this. I know Ray remembers this. Remember when you can just pull up to the gas station and just pump gas, right?
Mhm.
Without going
Mhm,
inside to
mhm,
pay first, or there was no, credit card swiping back then. It was the honor
mhm,
system, right? That you were gonna walk in
mhm,
there and you were gonna pay for it. And now that shit don't happen, right? For
mhm.
anybody.
No, no.
It doesn't matter how good, bad, or indifferent you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you prepay. And
Okay,
nobody cries foul. It just that's the way everything switched. I really do wonder if everybody just had a sort of made the switch, right? And you're never going to see this because the larger companies don't care. And to Matt's point, you churn and you have volume on such bad debt that you can sell it off for a lot more on a per dollar basis. with these larger companies, but I don't know. I don't think it's crass or rude or anything like that to ask and say somebody, hey, this is a lot of money coming out of my pocket just for me to show up here. You know,
Mhm.
you can pay me for my labor for me to actually do it after the fact, but the materials, the fuel, all the overhead, everything like that,
Ryan,
that's what I need to
okay,
get to the door.
okay, Ryan, I do that actually. Like, if somebody is contacting me for something other than routine, lawn and landscape management, and their outlay for the job is, say, over $1,000, right then and there, my policy is, before I will even give you a promise date, I need to have a 50% deposit in my hand. Okay? I need that 50% deposit because without that 50% deposit, that basically guarantees that I'm going to show up because I'm not going to run away with somebody's money. And secondly, that at least covers the cost of my materials when I start that job, because my time to do that job, hey, I will give that away, but then I will not be hung up for materials. Never. Okay? Not
Yep.
happening. So that's how I do it. That's exactly how I do it. Is that if above a certain amount, I say, glad to help you with this, but I'll book the job as soon as I have that 50% deposit in my hand. There. It's
Uh, yeah, no, I think that's something everyone needs to keep into their build that in. And again, if you can use software to help you get that done, by all means, please do it. I am a big fan of using it to one is that I feel like it provides the advantage of appearing and being professional. And
absolutely, Matt.
yep.
Absolutely.
It
Because
it provides consistency of branding across all visual aspects online, right? Like, for example, in my opinion, that a lot of the lawn care companies that I see scale the best, they are very consistent with their branding. All their trucks looks the same, all their texts look the same, all their printouts look the same, all their email headers look the same, their website looks the same. It's very congruent and cohesive, right? Cohesive branding. And I think that gives off more of an image to the kind of company you are than anything else. So when you're talking about the psychology of marketing, right? For whatever reason, that in and of itself is like the pinnacle, the absolute pinnacle uh of of marketing, right? Is having a cohesive brand. And so you leveraging software to maintain and to be an additional factor of your cohesive brand. In today's age, especially, I think that is an absolute must. And you could be a one man show and appear like you have 50 trucks on the road as long as your brand is cohesive.
absolutely, Matt. And I tell people the difference is that I tell people, notice something. Notice how I take credit cards. Notice
Mhm.
how my invoicing is all via email.
Mhm.
And if somebody so desires, I can like bust out my tab and figure out their account right there in front of them because it's all on there, right? So that is the difference, because for the people that are not used to working that way, they say, "What? Uh, you mean I don't have to leave cash under the doormat or whatever?" I said, "No, I will be invoicing you at the end of the month and that invoice will be via email. Have a good day. Have a good day
Yep.
for sure. I mean, and it just gives off a different feel to the business entirely. And I also remind people, hey, the guys that want you to leave cash under the doormat or whatever, I told them, watch out for those guys because they may or may not be in business.
Mhm.
And the reason why they may or may not be in business is it's only a matter of time before either the IRS or the Hawaii Department of Taxation catches up with them.
Yep.
All right, Matt. I mean, that's just that's just reality. Is that because like one of the things when I first opened my business account back in 2007, the bank asked me, "Am I going to be accepting cash as payment?"
Hmm.
Wow. And you know what? My answer to that was a flat out no. Absolutely not.
Uh, let's see. Did I? No, that was all the questions I had on that. Deme, I'm curious, and I'll say this is that the amount of lawn care guys that I see chasing money has cut down significantly over
Mhm.
the last X number of years. I'll say that in landscaping, I feel like it's still kind of hit and miss, but I don't.
Mm.
I'm not as deep in landscaping as I was, and it's
Mhm.
another thing when you do landscaping projects and you're doing one at a time, because you get halfway through and you're like, okay, I want to check for half, right? And then a lot of times they're not going to argue with you, and then you finish
Mhm.
and you're like, everything looks good to you. You walk the property and you're like, okay, I'm not leaving till you write me the last check. And then
Mhm.
usually it is not an issue. It is what it is, right? But if you got 10 crews out doing landscape projects and you don't want, to Tommy, your foreman who doesn't have a driver's license to collect a check, then I could see where it could get squirrely. How much of it do you see still taking place, whether it be in lawn care or landscaping, when it comes to people struggling to get paid?
I just think that you have to have a really uh, straightforward and upfront payment schedule.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think even on a lawn care program, like if you're like okay, so take it like this, right? If you offer prepaid discounts, great. Or even if you just offer a prepaid program and there's no discount, that's fine. But I would offer people and say, man, I don't have that $800, whatever it is, right? For the whole thing. I'd offer them a thing where, hey, I'll go ahead and take 300 up front, 400 up front, which is going to get me most of my materials, right? Easily. And then at that point, maybe it's just a straight monthly fee after that. And you're agreeing that, hey, we're gonna charge you this much on a subscription and you're not canceling, like you're taking the whole thing or you're paying a penalty, which is the remainder of what's left. I think that uh I don't know. I mean, what do you think cancel rates are these days? Do you think it's easier to cancel, not as easy to cancel? And do you think that cancellation rates are up or down over the board, say from 10 years ago? Take a guess. I have no idea. Up, down, indifferent?
Uh, I don't know.
I
I'm
I would say
okay, when it comes to cancellations, I'll say this. There were regions that I've heard recently that are no good. Like, and when I say no good, it's like the rate of growth has slowed significantly year over year since 2021.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I could
And I'm
see that.
thinking some areas of the Midwest, like parts of Indiana. Yeah, I gotta think of 2 guys that I've talked to there that have said just like, "Man, stalled." completely stalled.
Mhm.
Really?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just saw a uh, a pretty good sized landscape company here start advertising for 2024 packages, and they do everything. So they're full service. They'll do landscape, tree shrub, pruning, um, fert squirt, aeration, seeding, everything. And they've got this package now where you're paying, I think they said it starts off at like $400 a month for, an average subdivision house, and they'll take care of everything, right? Like, that they're going to come, once a week and mow your lawn. They're going to come twice a week and, or twice a month and service your beds, yada, 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 yada. And that's it. You just put it on auto pay, put it on your credit card, and boom. So I think that's something too that just making it easier to pay, but having it be straightforward too. I think that I was having this conversation with somebody on our Discord here recently. Just this week, we had our turf conference here in Ohio, lawn care, golf, sports turf. Everybody got together, um, and one of our members was actually there, and we talked for a while. And one of the things centered around, I know we've had this conversation before about different rounds and products and things like that, to break it down on a more, um, round by round level. But, he was struggling with the fact of, hey, should I, he wants to dump Merit and would want to go with Tetrino or with the Celiprin. Celiprin doesn't really fit into what he wants to do with what he's spraying and spreading at that time of year, early season. Tetrino would fit, but he's not sure about how, he would manage those costs, right? On the front side or the back side, he's gonna, he should be making a lot of money in the middle of summer on that, round 4 treatment, let's say. And he can't charge enough on the round 1 treatment to cover his costs on the Celiprin. So he's kind of fighting it of like, hey, how do I make this all work out? And I said, that's kind of what I told him. I said, well, maybe you go to something where if they can't afford the whole thing up front, you just go to, you're going to pay me a chunk,
Monthly.
25% upside.
Some.
Material draw, you can call it whatever you want,
Mm. Mhm.
and just get people, hey, listen, I don't use cheap. It's really Ray's argument, right? I don't use cheap shit. I use shit that works, and that costs money.
Yeah,
Just
it
like
costs money.
when you use
Mhm.
Jesse Busquet to evict your tenants,
Mm.
ladies and gentlemen.
Mhm.
Jesse Busquet law.
Yes. Yeah,
He's
when
expensive
you
because
do.
he fucking gets them out.
Yeah, he gets the job done, and that too. What I find, as part of this conversation is, as a service provider, do you differentiate yourself in terms of what you do, what you use, and how you do things? I mean, do you differentiate yourself? Because I frequently hear the pushback where people say, "My God, I've never heard of a single person lawn and landscape care business costing this much." And I say, "Hey, that did your other guy show up with the materials and products that would actually get this done? Did the guy do that or not?" I mean, that's the question. And so here's what and therefore what I tell people when I get that question is, I tell them, you are paying me basically to have Simplot's inventory on my truck ready to go whenever there's an issue. You're not paying me to be the lawn boy. You're paying me because I have things on hand for when bad things happen. I'm prepared. And
And I think, go ahead.
that's the bottom line, because differentiating yourself also helps you get paid. That's the thing, is that you got to make yourself so valuable that your clientele would think really hard about stiffing you or shorting you like that. You gotta differentiate yourself, and you know what? If and that's why too, should I run into somebody where they still don't value me even though I try to do good by them, I have no issues with cutting them off after I've given them opportunity to, make things right. I have no issues with it
And on that
because
differentiation, oh, go ahead. Shit.
yeah,
Shit.
and Matt Montgomery, that is where, again, I differentiate myself, and should somebody become bad debt, they are very quickly no longer my customer, and they're no longer my customer long before they run up a very big bill. Long before that happens, it doesn't take much with me.
Ray will usually take one of the neighbor's Shih Tzus and tie it up out back at that person's house and leave it there.
Yikes!
Um,
I
go ahead,
wouldn't.
go ahead, Matt.
One of the things that Looney said, do people cancel mid-season? All the time. Uh,
Yep.
so normally, like sales season lawn care where I live is you get February through May, and then there's a lull, and then when everything turns to shit in June, normally like right there, that first outbreak is like the next big sales cycle. And then again, smaller, but in fall too, right? So you kind of get this nice blip in the middle of the season when the shit starts hitting the fan where they're like, man, whoever's taking care of my shit sucks. I want someone new to do
Mhm.
this. So yeah, it happens all the time. But I'll say this, like in my industry now, everything is not contract negotiated on the front end, right? So depending on what we're doing, say it's a one-time, one-off deal, right? It's 25% down to get put onto the schedule. It's 25% to start. It's 25% upon completion, and then it's
Yep.
25% before it ships, before it leaves our building, right? So that's exactly how we do it. Now, if it's
It's
a
that
long
simple.
term customer or whatever, and they need terms, then it'll be a certain amount down, and then depending upon how much you put down, will dictate what your terms are on the back end, right? You pay 33% down, then you get 30 days on 60% of the balance or whatever the case may be, right? It's all negotiable at that point. But it's all completely laid out on the front end. And then the caveat is that if it doesn't move out of our warehouse, then there's a demurrage fee, right? Where we're going to bill for having to inventory it. And then if it doesn't get paid, period, then we take ownership of the material and then we'll sell it in the market for whatever we can get for it, right? So anyway,
Yep.
that's how we do it, right? We have to do it that way because again, typically our contracts are going to be like six figures, right? So you get stiffed on one. I mean, that's a monumental amount of money. High risk, high reward. So it's kind of how it plays out. What were you going to say to me?
No, I was just all I was gonna say was on that, differentiation, all that kind of stuff is, if you get in a situation more on the front end of people price shopping, things like that, and I've said this on here multiple times, but I think it comes back to the value piece. If I'm a little bit more or even a lot more, clearly you're not happy with the situation that you're in. Otherwise, you wouldn't be contacting me, right?
Mm.
So let me provide the service the way I feel that I need to, the way that I conduct business, and I'll show you that this is why we're different, right? And if they have no frame of reference, they have no, other you don't have any other lawns in that area or in that neighborhood, whatever the case might be, is maybe you do give them a little bit of the break if you want to try and get in there. But I wouldn't. I would honestly just stick to my guns and say, hey, price is the price, and the value is what I'm selling you, not the price. So I just see a
I-
lot of
i-
people that get beat up a little bit on that, and
In that
yeah.
vein of what you were asking at first about, people taking, cancels and, stagnant markets. I don't know if this is 100% fact, but based on what I'm seeing come through my inbox, is people looking for differentiators, right? And I don't know if it's they're looking for services to add to their portfolio due to demand for it, or are they looking to capture more revenue per high-end customer, right?
There you go.
And it's kind of off the wall, highly tailored, highly customized products that over the last 3 years, I have not seen demand for, like, at all. And then all of a sudden, it's the numbers on the demand side of it are, 10x what they were 2 years ago, right? And I would think that the pressure would have been on this during, the giant urea spike, and so it was weird that I didn't see it then, right? Now, there was, and I think, probably some of that would have been because ag was buying up things like chicken manure and stuff, right? When ag starts buying
Mhm.
that up, there's not really a lot of options that you can go to. But it seems like right now, more custom compounded, scenario based or regional based, city based type solutions for an application or a treatment or some type of longer term strategy seems to be in vogue right now. And that's as specific as I can be without being too
Wow. Wow.
opening up too much of it, right? But do you see what I'm saying? Like,
I get
there's
it,
a
yeah.
bigger demand for highly specialized shit right now that I haven't seen in 3 years,
Hmm.
That is,
and
I mean,
I don't know what that means.
no, you know what that means? I think that means that the cookie cutter, one size fits all program may well be peaking, and there's about to be change. And I've argued for that change in that if we want to survive as an industry, we need to differentiate, set ourselves apart, and stop copying everybody else and doing what everybody else does. Because
well, and
otherwise,
I
if you if you do, you're going to get the same results. And here's the bad part: you are going to get paid the same, even though, guess what? You're basically having to price match the very big company low margin prices. Not a good situation to
here's
be in.
here's a question, and this is something I've thought about for a while, and I'm interested to see how this plays out, right? So, in the last, since COVID, right, there has been a rash of companies that have been bought up either by private equity firms, holding companies that can try and, conglomerate these things, repackage and sell them, and continue the cycle further and further up the private equity chain, right? And what I've seen so far, I've seen some good ones. I've seen some companies that have the absolute right mindset, whether they're franchising or they're just buying up companies and rolling them up into their own, whatever the case might be. But I've seen some good ones, but I've seen a lot of ones that are just continuing to perpetuate really, really, really piss poor practices that are only there for a billable service and then GTFO. Like that's it. So I wonder, fellas, how much of the true greenization do you think is going to compound here? And what happens? Like, do these guys all figure out? Oh, hey, you can't print money if you just continually trip over your dick every single round until somebody cancels you and they go on to the next person. Or do these guys somehow figure out that, hey, good agronomy sells and we have such buying power that we could do this, maybe not the way that Ray does it, but we could do this more right than we do wrong. And it actually wouldn't be that bad from a business perspective.
Man, so here's the thing is that I think, yeah, I've got a couple different thoughts on this, right? I will say the
Yeah.
amount of M&A inquiries uh, during COVID, after towards I would say year 2 and year 3 of COVID, right? If 2019, winter of 2019, year 3 would be winter of 2022. I would say through that period, the number of predatory M&A companies was out of control. I mean, it was nuts. Literally, someone in your inbox every day ready to buy you. And the types of deals that came through would range. So, 1 out of 50 would be like what I would consider a legitimate deal of someone who wants to grow a business that's successful. And then the rest of them would be like, where and how do you have the money you have? It doesn't make sense. It was
Yeah,
weird. It was like spooky ghost money coming out of nowhere, and you would see too
yeah,
that they would typically offer less, and then the terms of it would be less favorable to the uh, selling company. And it was weird. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the number of people that came through the inbox, and you'd schedule, get real excited, schedule a call with them, and after like the third one, you realize like, wait a second, what is happening here? Now, on the same regard, that there was a lot of them too that would call, and then they would be like, "Oh, sorry, we're only looking to buy 10 million plus dollar businesses. We thought y'all were that size, but so you're not." That happened a lot too, so and so I couldn't give, and I'll say that typically the people who I talked to were looking to buy a $10 million business and the amount of capital they were looking to roll up that for, you know, those guys were all serious, right? But if you're less than a $10 million business, I'd say less than a $5 million business, chances are you had a lot of predatory people showing up and making moves on you. I don't know about, Furt and Squirt specifically, but I can say at least in manufacturing, that's what we saw, right? It was weird,
mhm,
the people that were showing up and making crazy, just like kind of off the wall offers. Um, and it's funny, actually. I called John Perry about one of them, that like an actual legit one, and when I talked to John Perry about it, what he was saying was, there are going to be multiple True Greens on the market sooner than later, right? Due to the amount of acquisitions that were taking place, and he was saying that that's why he's in it for more years to come, because he wants an opportunity to take a stab at him or whatever. I can't remember what all the conversation
yeah,
was, but it was something along the lines of that he saw in his purview, that the acceleration of, when I say M&As, I'm talking about merger and acquisitions, right? The
right,
the
right.
acceleration of binding up or joining or agglomerating these companies under the same PE umbrella. It was weird. That was definitely a weird time.
But how do you think that shakes out from
Oh, you're right. I think it depends on the M&A, right? So of how many of those are predatory, I think the predatory ones are going to be, spending, the money and not giving an absolute shit what shakes out on the other side. Zero care, zero clue, it is what it is, and just let the cookie crumble. There's going to be 1 out of 50, that, uh that actually do give a shit, and chances are, and I'll say this, the companies that I do know on the manufacturing side that rolled up into, an M&A from a PE, that have been extremely successful is, 1, they were very low key about it. 2, the original owners, stayed on board as part of an equity swap, and 3, um, they are still primary decision makers. They were just given more capital to invest where they thought the wisest dollars were spent, and then they had a team of people who could do a faster risk analysis on spending those dollars on whatever they determined was the best
Sure.
place to spend them. That, I think, is the home run play, but how many of those are moving into lawn care? If I saw 1 in 50 in manufacturing, I'm gonna say the same thing exists in lawn care, 1 out of 50. So if 50 companies that got bought, 49 of them are probably does not give a shit what ends up happening out of it. If it is PE that bought it, if it's another lawn care company that bought it, then yeah, it's a whole nother you know, bag of shit to open up and stir around.
So for okay, let's say in that, True Green, the wannabe True Green space,
Hmm.
I've had several, long windshield events to think about things like this, you know?
Yep.
Um, what would be let's say that the 3 of us walked into the boardroom at, True Green or whatever, at the technician level, at the production manager level, and at the branch manager level, what are one thing for each of those people that we should tell them to do a better fucking job at to improve, BMPs, just from an agronomic perspective, and or just general, like, not churning through so many customers because you suck, you know? What would one thing at each level? I'm curious, especially for Ray. I
Man,
really wanna see Ray.
I in
Oh
my
my.
opinion, it would be the type of training that is extended to the technicians. I'll say this, having gone through the training program at True Green, pretty effective. I didn't think there was anything about it that left a lot of open-ended questions. The only thing I walked away from it with that I was still like, "Huh?" was, being able to call, herbicides for specific weeds off the top of my head, I left college without that ability. Walked into True Green without that ability, and training didn't help me entirely on that, right? But at least had enough to know broadleaf grassy weeds. Here's a few herbicides that are gonna work in that space, and here's a few herbicides that are gonna work in the grassy weed space, right? Okay, it got that dialed in. So, customer interaction, I felt like was very sufficient. Consistency of language that the technicians use, I felt like was very consistent. And then it comes down to kind of like individual branch culture too. I think some of it plays into there. Like when you ride on trucks and stuff, you learn how they talk. You kind of fill that mold. I think they do a good job of that. On the sales side, however, that is cutthroat, right? And the great thing about the technicians is that when it's winter and you get laid off, what do you get to go do? You get to go sell lawn care, right? That's a ton of fun uh, for us to go do that, right? But what's not fun is during the sales season when they have quotas and thresholds to hit in order to maintain their job, and so they're selling literal shit in order to post one on the board and ring the bell. I think that accounts for fucking 90, no, not that many. I would say 50% of the problems. I'll say 50%. I think the other 40% is I don't know where it comes from. I do not know where it comes from, but I think it is going to be on the agronomy side. And I think it may be not what goes into the tanks, right? I think from a product selection standpoint, the right products are being selected. I think it has to do with mixing 30,000 gallons at a time and not having a sufficient setup to do that to produce a consistent output. Then the other thing too is that there's a lot of scrutiny by environmental groups at the state level on True Green, and so rinsate and wash off. I don't know how much of this I can say out loud. From what I
Just
understand, how
statute of
about this?
limitations, you're fine.
I don't
Yeah.
know if this is fact or not. However, rinsate has to be recycled in under the premise that it is an active pesticide. So
Correct.
if
Mhm.
you put in a certain amount of rinsate that may contain all fertilizer, you have to account for the amount of pesticide of potential runoff that could have made it in it as being active in that tank, right? So, um, in some instances during the time of the year, maybe, just maybe, what's accounted for in rinsate is not actually pesticide being recycled back into the tanks. And then you get into those situations like, I don't understand. Last week when I went and sprayed, all my weeds died. And this week when I went and sprayed, shit is not doing anything. I don't understand what the fuck is going on.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just saying.
I mean that
That
is,
accounts for the other 50%,
you
40%.
know, that's parlaying into the concept of bulk mixing, uh, having stuff stored, all of that is like big no-nos. And the other piece that I think you kind of like briefly went into, but I'll go into further, is compliance with best management practices. Okay? Because I remember Ryan showing us that very cringe Joe Knows Turf where those motherfuckers are pushing a spreader
Mm,
and the other guy is running around with a backpack sprayer, and that was during the middle of a thunderstorm, Ryan. I remember that. And
I remember that, yeah.
you see, and you see that is the kind of action that, one, violates all best management practices, and two, should you get caught doing that either by your clientele or the regulatory agencies responsible for that area,
Mhm.
right now, the big companies are kind of like Gotti, John Gotti. They are untouchable by the authorities. However, they got Al Capone, they got John Gotti, so it is only a matter of time before the state environmental department, for example, says, okay, we have enough to shut these fuckers down. That's it. We're done. And then, of course, in the case of a state like Hawaii, I've frequently told you guys that I heard chatter back in 2007 or 2008 that True Green was supposed to come to Hawaii. Well, you know what,
Oof.
guys? It's now 2023 and there is no sign of them here.
Not yet.
I
Yeah.
no, no, I think they looked at how Hawaii Department of Health and Hawaii Department of Ag would treat them, and they noped right out of this. Okay, I think that's what happened. They realized that, oh my god, if we get caught spreading fur or spraying weeds in the middle of a thunderstorm, we're not going to be able to talk our way out of that one. It's not happening.
I almost got struck by lightning on a lawn.
Hey,
Mind you, I was
I
pushing
did
a
too.
spreader, but I
No,
almost
I
did.
did too. I almost got struck by lightning too, and unfortunately, that time that I was making that application, I had the Trident,
Mm.
and so I thought to myself, "Oh, goody, Ray is going to turn into a 115-pound lightning rod." Nope. No, thank you. Fuck that. I mean, so, but then that is when I, you know, made some decisions at that point, and I asked myself, why in the hell am I out here treating a lawn when a supercell is passing over the island? What the hell am I doing here today? Why am I doing this? Why?
Yeah.
And then when I got to ask that, and then when I got to have that hard conversation with somebody, my goodness, because basically that person was told, you know what? Bye.
Uh, it's it's an experience, right? Until
Yeah.
you've had to do that, it's one of those things. Uh,
Yep.
we're
We've all
about to
been there.
call this real quick. Chuck said, way off the wall question from Matt. What was your most memorable experience in Japan? What are you looking forward to most with your next visit? A couple things I would say. Number one is one just getting to know my in-laws like on their turf, right? Was pretty wild, right? Because they don't speak. My mother-in-law speaks some English. My father-in-law does not speak English, but alcohol is the great mediator, right? And so you have drinks together, and you can effectively communicate. And what I can't wait to go back next time about is now with the advancements in real-time translation technology. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Second of all, was getting up because you have such bad jet lag. Is getting up at 4 in the morning and just going and just walking, right? Taking 2 hours to get up and just go watch everything. It is so um, uh, so different than anything I'm used to, right? And of course, I look like a gargoyle over there, and so it's a thing. I just enjoyed it, taking it all in. What's interesting is the number of native plants there that are also native here. From a latitude perspective, Yokohama, where I was, is not too far off from East Tennessee, where I live now. And so it's interesting. And but being out in the morning and just watching people exist in their day to day, was pretty surreal experience, thinking about that taking place in real time on the other side of the planet from where I grew up. And there's this whole other ass civilization that I went just a significant part of my life. Like, you see it on a map, but you don't actually think about like people there like living their lives, and then you get to see it. It was fucked up in a good way. I mean that in a very very good way. No, there was nothing bad about it at all. I had a great time. And then of course,
It's getting dark.
eating eating strange things and drinking strange things, right? Like when you're drinking booze that has a snake in it, it has a rattlesnake in it, and it's looking at you as you pour shots out of it and continue to pour shots out of it, and then by the end of it, you think you've developed some sort of like divine connection with the snake that's in the jar that you've been drinking. It's a pretty interesting uh,
Matt,
pretty
you've
interesting
had that?
experience too.
You've actually had that? Wow.
Fuck, right? Oh, man, dude, let me tell you. All right, so because, of course, Simon and I are married, and the rumor is that well, the statement about it is that it's an aphrodisiac, right? So everyone is buying you these drinks, and so we went to this kind of a hometown bar that it's a Okinawa style bar by her house, and they know her family real well and stuff. And so we went in there, and the owner, of course, brought a fucking jar of this booze that had a giant fucking rattlesnake in it, and set it on the table and was like,
Fuck.
congratulations, ominato. And
Here's what I know about it. Here's what I know
we
about that
drank the
stuff,
whole fucking thing.
is that is a common thing to, Japan and China.
Hmm.
I've also seen stuff with, get this one, Matt, centipedes or scorpions in it.
Oh, yeah, 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 you'll see that
Okay?
from
What?
time to
Okay.
time.
Yeah, I've
Uh-huh.
seen I've seen that with centipedes or scorpions, and for centipedes and scorpions, that is the treatment for arthritis. That's why I know about that. And of course, the fucking rattlesnake in the jar is China's answer to Viagra. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's the same thing in Japan, and,
In Japan. However, I can also tell you, that doesn't do jack beans. Sorry, don't work.
uh, no, not yeah, there was nothing about it that other than the fact that you're literally, like, occasionally
Look
getting
at
on eye level with the snake and looking into its
was it
eyes and thinking,
yeah, you're looking at a
You're
damn
dead,
you're looking at a
motherfucker.
damn
You're
a
dead. You
rattlesnake.
drowned in my booze, you sack of shit."
Yeah. However, the other use
Yeah,
of that
yeah, I don't wanna
rattlesnake
toss a dead
stuff,
snake that way.
yeah, yeah. The other use of that rattlesnake stuff and how I know it is that's also a treatment for pneumonia.
Uh there's nothing like an anticoagulant plus an anticoagulant to just really get things just slipping and sliding through your veins. Okay, we are going to get out of here again. A couple dates. Next, what, is it next week? Is it
2 weeks.
Yes. No. 2 weeks.
2 weeks from
2
now.
weeks.
2 weeks from
Santa
today.
and Mrs. Claus.
Yep, that'll be the 21st. We have Santa and Mrs. Claus, and then on the 28th, we have our end of year especial. And neither of these do you want to miss. Boy, we have some fucking treats for you. Can't wait.
Say, wait, did you say
think-
treats or freaks? Because either
yes.
was correct. Yes.
Yes. And what is just going to make it so much better is on Sunday, Spencer called me, and so I've got a feeling this is just gonna go over. That's all the tease you get, suckers. Beyond that, we are gonna go.
It'll be a
gift. Hang out.
It'll be a gift
in the after show. If you are okay with dirty humor, you want to have more individualized talk time with us, especially if you're going over something this winter that you want to do to help your business, and whatever aspect it may be. If you have questions about a CRM, integrating or taking on a subject like switching all your clients to auto pay or credit card on file or whatever, by all means, check it out. Patreon.com / the what is this? Thank you for having a show that actually highlights that the other shows are just
No. That's for the group.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can't
talk.
read that out loud, but 100%. I think I know him. I think I know him.
Oh, okay.
No, I do not. I'm thinking Wilson is the last name. I do not know him. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Hell yeah. Okay. Sure. Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
We're coming out of the woodwork.
I know, man. Fucking A, right. Also coming up after the 28th, we're gonna have Dr. Shaddix back on in January. We'll announce that date coming up shortly. That's always a crowd favorite, fan favorite. So I look forward to that. Again, we're gonna go hang out with the patrons. Patreon.com / burn and return. It's like $4 a month, $5 a month, whatever it is. But you get more unrestricted access to us, and of course, a community of people who are like you that are interested in learning to do better, to be better, and just take whatever it is they do about their life and take it to the next level. And it's not just about lawn care. It's literally a community of people who are interested in being the absolute best people that they can be, or the drunkest people that they can be. But that's okay, because sometimes that's needed to decompress from the shit that is that life can throw at you sometimes. And we're here for that as well too. We get it. Shout out to Lushy for manning our 888 number. He does a great job with that, and we're very thankful for Lushy for handling that. We got to keep everybody's head on straight and narrow. Okay, yeah, I think that's got it. Everyone have a fantastic night. We'll catch y'all on the flip side. Bye.
It's Christmas time.
It's Christmas time.